Monosodium glutamate, or MSG for short, has some very mixed reactions whenever its name is mentioned. Some people are completely fine with it and even advocate for its use, while others believe it to be toxic and harmful and should be avoided at all times. What's the truth? Is there a definitive answer? Welcome back to the series where I discuss topics, myths, misconceptions, and techniques related to food and food science. This series has been on the back burner for quite some time now, as my last video was months ago, but I plan to bring the series back full swing with all the suggestions left on that last video. As stated before, I'm going to be talking about monosodium glutamate. I'm going to be going over general information and details, the history of its uses, what products it's commonly used in, why people think it's harmful, and the science behind how it actually interacts with your body. Here are the timestamps if you wish to skip ahead, but without further ado, let's get started. MSG is known as a sodium salt where glutamic acid is combined with sodium to create monosodium glutamate. Glutamic acid is an amino acid that is commonly found naturally in other foods. Some common foods you might have heard of are most meats, fish, and dairy. Some more specific examples would be tomatoes and seaweed. Compounds based off glutamic acid provide that savory taste that you might be familiar with, or umami as it's officially called. So when you're seeing that steak and your mouth starts to water from that smell, or whenever you bite into some roasted tomatoes, that is the word glutamates. But those are naturally occurring sources. How does MSG fit into all this? Well, MSG was originally discovered in Japan by a scientist named Kakune Ikeda, who extracted the natural glutamate found in kombu, which is a seaweed that is typically used when making dashi broth. He combined the extracted glutamic acid with salt and water and created the first ever version of MSG. Nowadays though, MSG is made through the fermentation of certain starches and sugars. This cute little diagram from Ajinomoto easily describes the process behind it. After the fermentation process, the glutamic acid is then neutralized by the use of sodium hydroxide, and out comes monosodium glutamate. Now that we know what MSG is, we can look at how it was used throughout the years. MSG's purpose is to enhance the flavor of whatever food it's added by adding that umami taste to your dish. The most infamous use of MSG in the past was being added to Chinese food. The use of MSG in Chinese food went under fire in the 1960s when a letter in the New England Journal of Medicine claimed that consuming Chinese food would lead to negative issues in your body. This was later deemed a hoax, but the damage was done. There was actually a term for the issues that occur when consuming MSG, and it's not called MSG syndrome or glutamate syndrome, but Chinese restaurant syndrome. This was the official way to describe the negative MSG effects on your body, but since it was offensive and it was unscientific as it had no way to link the name to MSG but instead attack a culture, it has then been changed to MSG symptom complex. I'm sure that if you ask anyone about where they most likely find MSG, Chinese food would probably be the most common answer. However, there are many products that contain MSG you may not even know about. Nowadays, MSG is mainly found in food products that need to be packed with flavor but produced rather cheaply. Most common processed snacks and chips have MSG. Doritos, Pringles, Cheetos, and other brands of chips. Even my favorite snack, shrimp chips, have MSG in them. Continuing with the trend of cheap and processed foods, frozen meals usually will have MSG in them. It's hard to pack a lot of flavor into those while being less than a few bucks per meal. So MSG is the perfect shortcut. A more commonly cheap product would be instant ramen. Usually though, it's the flavor packet that has the MSG, so not the actual noodles themselves. Most low-end and cheap seasoning blends will have MSG to just boost the flavors that the blend has. And finally, common condiments such as your favorite ketchup, mayonnaise, ranch, maybe even mustard will have MSG as well. If you are afraid of consuming MSG or you want to be careful of what products have MSG in them, make sure to always double check the labels on any packages while shopping. The FDA, otherwise known as the Food and Drug Administration, requires that any product that has MSG in it to be properly listed in the ingredient list. Moving away from the shelves and to the drive-thrus of your favorite fast food restaurants, multiple restaurants have claimed and stated that they use MSG in some of their items. While doing a little bit of research, I noticed that most of these items are chicken related. I don't know if that's a coincidence or a trend. But Chick-fil-A's signature chicken sandwich was confirmed to have MSG. Both KFC and Popeyes have confirmed to use MSG in some of their chicken products as well. And McDonald's is planning to release a line of chicken sandwiches this year. And according to this article, they have been looking into using MSG in their products. Based off the products that I just listed, the trend seems to be that more processed and cheaper foods will tend to have MSG in them, because the perfect shortcut to adding flavor on a budget is MSG. So if you want to stray away from MSG, then you definitely want to stay away from processed foods and opt for more natural and whole ingredients. So why are people afraid of MSG? Well, the list of harmful effects that people feel after eating MSG is quite extensive. Headaches, flushing of the face, sweating, tightness in the face, rapid heartbeats, chest pain, nausea, and just overall body weakness. This list of symptoms is known as the MSG symptom complex that I mentioned before. Fun little story. My family would complain about these symptoms after going to our local Chinese restaurant, but would eat processed snacks and foods with no complaints. There has been no definitive scientific evidence that links MSG to these listed symptoms. While you could have a sensitivity to MSG, most of the time these symptoms are unrelated, are either in your head or caused by something else in the food. A study shows that in order for people to have a reaction to high levels of MSG, they would need to consume a large dose of it, more than one person would normally consume if just eating products with MSG in them. So how does MSG actually interact with your body once it's consumed? Well, as the name suggests, it activates the glutamate receptors in your body. Glutamate receptors are commonly found throughout your whole central nervous system and are known as an excitatory neurotransmitter. This means that it must stimulate the nerve cells to release the signal. Glutamate receptors are linked to parts of your brain that focus on learning and memory as well. Since MSG activates these receptors, the concern is that overstimulation of these receptors can lead to negative effects. There was a study that looked into the long-term effects of MSG consumption. The study looked at how MSG can overstimulate glutamate receptors that are found in the hypothalamus, hippocampus, and amygdala. Obesity, reproductive problems, and brain disorders were all possibilities. However, the study concludes that these effects would require higher amounts of MSG to be consumed, but their concern is that with MSG becoming more commonly used as an additive, problems could exist in the future. However, the study also states that vitamin A, C, D, and E can help protect the nerve cells from these effects. So, a balanced diet where you're consuming natural meats, vegetables, and fruits, along with the occasional MSG seasoned dish or processed food, will not be detrimental to you. So with all this information, what does it all mean? Well, while MSG is not the infamous poison and toxin that its reputation makes it out to be, it's not completely harmless as well. Much like a lot of the additives we have in our food now, moderation is key. Don't go consuming a diet of MSG-laden food or processed food, but maintain a balanced diet and have the occasional food with MSG in it. I personally don't mind the use of MSG in my own food, but I don't really add it to any of my dishes. Maybe once in a while if I feel like it needs an extra oomph, you know? The food world is full of products that could be potentially harmful to our health. Processed sugar. But I want to help shine some information and light on MSG. I hope that this video was informative and helpful and maybe even changed your mind about it. Let me know what your thoughts are on MSG, and also if you have any suggestions on what else you'd like me to talk about. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video to anyone who needs to know more about it. This has been an absolute pleasure talking about MSG with y'all. and I'll see you on the next one.